Rain Johnson here, Death Doula and palliative massage therapist. I was just interviewed by CBC Radio, and one of the questions was how my role as a death doula has changed during this pandemic. And I really came away from it thinking, wow, you know, with or without this pandemic, we have made death and dying so complicated. And also, there's a bit of a taboo still about talking about it. And as well as we're grief illiterate and death illiterate. We don't have the words, or we don't dare to have the words around death and dying. So this brings to mind, the importance of planning, the importance of having the conversations with our loved ones. And I know that, a lot of folks my age, their children don't want to talk about it, but the parents do, and or vice versa sometimes. So that creates kind of a difficult situation. But there's so many great prompts in how to have the conversations, how to go about planning, and simplifying it as much as possible, because the dying has become so medicalized and death has become so industrialized. So at one point, we used to care for our loved ones. We cared for them at home. They died. The women would wash the body. The men maybe build a casket. They even transported the casket to the cemetery, dug their grave. And so this was real hands-on. And it's still possible to do some of that or all of it, but it takes planning. And I suggest, it's like choose who you want as a funeral home. I know the expression of the CBC reporter that was interviewing me just now. I said, visit some funeral homes, and like the look on her face was a little bit shocking. And I just said, I know it might sound a little morbid, but when we live our life and value what we really live in our values, then we want that in our end of life care as well. So how to bring that about. And I know that a lot of people say, oh, talking about death is so morbid. Well, it's not. Talking about death is morbid. And that's one of the lines that a friend walked away from one of my death cafes. He said, Rain, that was the least morbid thing I've done all day. So, and if people have the venues or have the space to talk about it, they're usually willing. And they may have some great stories to tell about in the past, or not so great stories, how we want to change that trajectory and what we see for ourselves. So if we can feed our creativity rather than our fear, how can we involve the children and be creative when a loved one is dying? To string up some prayer flags or whatever you want to call them, for the children to draw these beautiful pictures in honor of their grandfather, their grandmother, or their parents, or whatever, and make it a kind of a play date. Just something where we can draw upon even some traditional experiences or cultural experiences, or traditions and rituals that they've once had. And I've just heard that, the funeral homes will financially support those who have died of COVID. And I think that's great. The other proactive thing a person can do, if, there's so many restrictions in visitations, whether a loved one has COVID or they're dying of cancer in the hospital or institution, I noticed that AHS has a great, real specific page on their website of what and how to visit and who can visit. So being proactive and finding out ahead of time what we can do and what we can't do. And working towards a balance between living life and recognizing the inevitability of death. So you don't have to think about it all the time, but just, just talk about it, bring it out in the open, and also live your life. And so whether it's plague or pandemic or famine or war, we are all facing death. And life and death is a package deal. So that's, it's just, death is part of life. And so again, I just wanted to share those little bits from when I walked away from the interview today. Again, Rain Johnson, doing death care differently. Thanks.